Hey everybody, I'm Tasha, and I'm here today with Doug Diamond. Say hello, Doug.
Hello.
We do have a little bit of delay, so if there's any awkward pauses, that's why, just so you know, guys. And I'm very excited to have Doug on the call with us today, on the video with us. I'm used to saying on the call, because I was on the call with them. Doug and Richard Sachs do a radio show called Lost Arts Radio. And before we get started, where can people find that, Doug?
Our radio show is at lostartsradio.com, so it's pretty easy to find. That's our website. We're currently on Blog Talk Radio, but we're making some moves, and we may be doing some other things here real soon. But right now we're on Blog Talk Radio, but you can always find what we're doing by going to the website, which is lostartsradio.com.
Okay, thank you. I'm checking because my blood sugar felt like it was dropping, but it's all good. Okay.
Oh, good.
My brain goes away when my blood sugar gets low, so I need to have a brain to ask you questions. Okay.
Yes, so, that is helpful, yes.
So, anyway, their radio show is really, really great. And ever since being on there, I have been friends with Doug on Facebook, and reading his posts has just been really enlightening for me. And it's a lot of stuff I don't want to know, but it's stuff that I do need to know. And this is why I wanted to have him here today, so that you guys could meet him and find him on Facebook as well and learn from him. So we're just going to, I guess, give you a little... Actually, before we start talking, why don't you tell us how to find you for anyone who doesn't watch the full call? Okay.
Well, I'm in the music business day to day. My website is diamonddiscaudio.com, which is diamond, D-I-A-M-O-N-D, disc, D-I-S-C, audio, A-U-D-I-O.com. That's my business. I've been in the music business for 25 years or so, and I've been in business for myself for about almost 20 of that, so a significant amount of that. I also have dougdiamond.com, which I'm kind of renovating. Right now, it just goes to a blog type of site, and eventually I think I'm going to make that my Facebook posts. So, but currently it's the Lost Arts Radio Facebook page is connected to that blog. So whenever I do a post on Lost Arts Radio's Facebook page, it filters over to dougdiamond.com. So that was the easiest thing to set up, and that is up and functional. The best way to reach me as far as what you're concerned with and what we're talking about mostly tonight, I think, is on Facebook, and it's facebook.com/diamonddisc, and it's just one word, diamond, D-I-A-M-O-N-D-I-S-C. So it's Diamond Disc. That's the name of my business, and I started the Facebook page initially with that in mind, and then I transferred over a couple of years ago to pretty much just doing no personal or business related things at all on Facebook, and it's been other things, more awareness related things. So that's the best way to find me, facebook.com/diamonddisc.
Okay, so it is not a double D, it is a single D. Diamond.
Correct.
Disc. Okay.
You got it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, so what we are here to talk about today is all of those things going on in the world that most of us don't know about. I know for me, I stopped watching the news because it was depressing, and I kind of switched to just reading Facebook, and people are talking about the news there, so that's what I learned. And my husband, learns stuff at work, and he listens to some radio shows, and that's kind of my source of news. So I don't really know what's going on in the world, but I know a lot of people, maybe watch the news or have websites that they read or whatever. But it seems like typically if I do hear about stuff, it's what mainstream media is talking about. And actually, could you tell us, what does this mean when somebody says mainstream media compared to what the stuff that you are sharing, Doug?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, mainstream media is also known as the dinosaur media, and they are extincting themselves, essentially. But they don't care, and the reason they don't care is because they get funding from multinational corporations and big banks that basically will keep them on the air and in print for as long as they need to put their message out. So mainstream media is all of the huge conglomerate type of media outlets like ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, anything on cable TV for the most part is going to be considered mainstream media for the most part, except like local shows, local cable access wouldn't be necessarily. Now, in the last few years, there's been a significant rise in what some people refer to as alternative media. And alternative media is, to me, the real media. Because even though there's some disinformation out there, most of the people out there that have their own cell phones and their own podcasts and their own, ways of videoing themselves and putting up stories and things like that, a lot of those people do far more research than the average mainstream media news reporter. So the mainstream media is they're essentially ignoring many of the true stories and exactly what's happening, and instead they exist to put out a certain type of spin, that the power structure wants them to put out. So in other words, they're bought and sold and control a certain message and put out a certain message, and that message is whatever the power structure wants. And the power structure is a number of different things. It's the militarized industrial complex. That's part of it. The United States government, other governments, and on up above them as well. But it's essentially controlled. It's very controlled, and most people don't realize, but upwards of 90% of the mainstream media is controlled by just 6 companies. So 6 companies control about 90% of all mainstream media, and that's a pretty big pool of media out there. So it's really easy to control the message, because you're dealing with 6 huge conglomerates that can basically disseminate whatever information that they want, and it's not even really so much what they want, it's what they're told to put out. So that's basically what the mainstream media is.
Thank you. Okay, so all this stuff that you just told me, how do I know that you're just not making it all up?
Well, you can do your own research and look into it yourself. The mainstream media has been debunked so many times by so many people and caught lying time and time again. So most people, I think, have caught on to the fact that they're lying at least some of the time. And you've had a few scandals, too, where you've had some mainstream media news reporters and people like that have gotten in trouble for lying. I think that most people are realizing that they're not being told the truth at least some of the time. However, many people out there still rely on the mainstream media for their news. So, it's catch-22. It really is. So if you really want to know the truth, though, you pretty much need to ignore what they say and look into things for yourself. And there are really good alternative sources, which to me is the real media. And Infowars.com is a really good one. Alex Jones has put together an incredible media company that's a small company. I think 50-some employees is all. And what they put out is the truth. And he backs it all up with mountains of data and links to original articles, whether it's links back to the mainstream media that shows that they're talking about certain things and then yet twisted in a different way or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of really good independent media outlets out there. To me, Infowars is one of the best ones, probably the best one. because they've been at it for 20 plus years and they really know what they're doing. So, personally, I don't really pay attention much to TV news and that kind of thing. I do occasionally go to mainstream media websites, especially if there's an article that's linking over to that, and I'll look and see what they say and see what their spin is on that particular issue. But for the most part, I tend to ignore what they say because it's such a huge filter. It's being filtered by the controllers of those companies. So they put out the message that they want to be put out. That's basically it.
Okay. So, what is going on in the world, Doug, that we need to know about? What are some of the big things going on that most people don't know about? And this is a health channel here, but, I want to share with my viewers things that are important. I mean, big things that are important that affect our health or anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of things, as you know, a lot of things happening. Many people are awakening to issues like GMOs in particular. I think most people want to know what's in their food. And I think that part of it is a really good starting point for a lot of people, is recognizing that our food is being genetically modified, it's being manipulated by different corporations for different reasons. I would start with that issue, especially from a health standpoint. Look at that. Look at vaccines. Look at the true reality of what we've been told versus what the facts are. And you'll see that there's a pretty good schism there between the two. So there are a number of different issues. GMOs, vaccines. You could look at fluoride in the water. Most people are told or believe that fluoride is good for your teeth and that we need it. And there are so many independent studies out there that prove otherwise. You really need to know what the truth is. And unfortunately, you're not going to get the truth about GMOs and fluoride and vaccines from the mainstream media because they're controlled by folks who make a lot of money from those issues, in particular the medical industry. Big pharma and the mainstream media are tied to the hip, essentially. Mainstream media gets much of its profits and income for advertising from big pharma. So you seem to be aware of that and realize that maybe it's possible that what the mainstream media is putting out there isn't entirely accurate because they're just a little bit biased because they have all this money flowing in from big pharma and companies that like Monsanto and places like that are involved in creating GMO crops. So you just have to be really conscious and aware of some of the different issues, and you need to look into it for yourself for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so on this channel, I've been talking a lot recently about my experiences with parasites and Morgellons, which nobody knows what it is, and how some people, suspect chemtrails, and some people think chemtrails are totally not related. But either way, we do know that something is happening in the sky, and what I really like about, so I was just listening to a Lost Arts radio program about chemtrails, geoengineering. I guess that's what it's called. Could you tell us about that from a factual perspective, things that you know because of people that you've talked to, research that you've done, that's not just conspiracy stuff?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, let me start by just saying what my story was just a little bit. As far as how I got interested in this particular issue, several years ago, one of my music clients was at my studio, which happens to be at my house, and we were standing outside. We just finished working on his project, and we were standing outside talking, and he looked up in the sky, and he saw all kinds of trails above the neighborhood that I live in, and he said, boy, they're really at it today. They're really spraying hard. And I looked at him and thought, that's a curious thing to say. Why do you say that? And so he proceeded to tell me about contrails, which I'd heard of, and chemtrails. He always used the chemtrails term. And he said, well, go on YouTube and find a movie on there. It's a free movie called What in the World Are They Spraying? So I did. I just basically agreed to do it. Just
my blood sugar is dropping.
No, it's fine.
Too distracting.
No, it's fine. Yeah. Anyway, he told me to go watch this movie. So just to kind of humor him, I went ahead and did that, just so I could have a conversation with him about it. And so I watched the movie, and I would recommend it, by the way. There's two movies: What in the World Are They Spraying? And Why in the World Are They Spraying? There's two different movies by a guy named Michael Murphy who put those together. So I watched the movie. I think I watched both movies at that time, and yeah, I came to the realization that what they were saying in the film was true, but there wasn't. I didn't feel like there was really anything I could do about it. I mean, it'd be a good thing to understand deeper and to know more about, but I didn't necessarily know what I could do about it myself. So I kind of put it on the back burner and let a few months go by and didn't really pursue it too much. And then I saw another film called Food Inc., which I don't know if you've seen that, but in that film they make a connection to Monsanto. And that in and of itself isn't...
And Monsanto?
Well, I'm getting to that.
Okay.
Basically, Monsanto has developed many different things, but one of the things they've developed is an aluminum-resistant seed. And to me, that was a red flag, because I remembered after having watched What in the World Are They Spraying, they talked about nano-aluminum particles being found everywhere, in the rain, in the air, in the soil, everywhere. So I thought, that's pretty interesting. So at that point, I really felt like I couldn't ignore it any further after seeing those two films and knowing just enough about it to kind of get my feet wet. So one of the first things I did was what most people do, and you go to Google and you type in chemtrails. So the very first hit you get on your search that you get it, at least with Google anyway, is the Wikipedia definition of chemtrails, which the first thing it says is conspiracy theory. So I read through it and thought, that's interesting. They're saying it's a conspiracy theory on Wikipedia. And I didn't necessarily buy that, because I felt like there was more to it than it's just a theory. So I started digging deeper and do a little bit more research, and then realized that it's called geoengineering, and that chemtrails is just the layman's term that's kind of been given what we see in the skies. So I always encourage people to use the word geoengineering or climate engineering or some other scientific term, so that when people such as yourself or whoever who are just trying to learn about this issue, when they go Google it or go search for it on their favorite search engine, that they come to websites that have actual data and factual information that they can absorb, and not just conspiracy theory stuff, not just debunking sites. Those are called debunking websites. So anyway, I realized it was called geoengineering, and as I started searching around, I found a website that kept coming up called Geoengineering Watch. And so I went to this website. I realized that the person in charge of this website was also in both films that I had just seen, and his name is Dane Wigington. So I filled out the contact form on his website, and I submitted it, and basically just said, I told him who I was, and that I had experience in audio editing and mastering and video editing and website design and graphic design, and I was willing to help him, no charge. Just let me know if there's something I can do, because I really want to be involved in this issue. Well, I hit send, and Dane phoned me up about 2 hours later, and we talked for quite a while, and so he started filtering projects to me little by little over the next few weeks and months, and I ended up taking over a website for him, and then eventually becoming the main webmaster on geoengineeringwatch.org. And now Dane is one of my best friends in the whole world. We talk daily, and he is the world's foremost researcher and probably the person that understands this issue of geoengineering more than anyone else that I know of in the world. And I would highly recommend going to geoengineeringwatch.org, and down the center channel, the center column of the homepage, we've got all kinds of videos. And if people want more information, they can go there and watch some of his presentations that he's given over the last few years, but in particularly the last couple of years, that are really eye-opening. And that really will start you down the path of questioning what we've been told versus what reality is. And I'm not talking about only the issue of geoengineering. That is a huge issue. But it also led me into 9/11 and questioning the official narrative and story that we were given with 9/11. And, that's called Truthers, 9/11 Truthers. And, the main... Well, in general, the term is 9/11 Truthers. It's somebody that is looking for the true information about what happened on the events of 9/11. And truthers sort of get a bad rap, in all honesty, but I consider myself a truther now, only because I've really spent a lot of time looking at it and investigating it. And that was a real eye-opener for me, was after I kind of learned about the geoengineering issue to be, some of Dane's presentations mention 9/11. So I started investigating because I remembered some of the things he said and what I remembered, and kind of put those together with additional information that's not available on the mainstream media. And one of the absolute best websites for 9/11 is a website called AE911truth.org. And AE means Architects and Engineers. And they have a feature-length film on their website and on YouTube called Explosive Evidence. And explosive evidence reveals all sorts of information about 9/11 that we were not told through the mainstream media. So 9/11 was a big, big issue for me when I realized that now at this point, over 2,500 architects and engineers who build skyscrapers for a living say there's more to the story than we were told, when they've looked at the evidence and realized that World Trade Center 7 was taken down on purpose. It collapsed in its own footprint, literally in 7 seconds, from standing up as a normal building to completely flat in its own footprint in 7 seconds. So World Trade Center 7 was a big red flag for me, because I realized, okay, well, if that's the case and that building was demoed, meaning demolished on purpose, then is it feasible that the other two buildings were too? And there's a lot of information on the web about the other two buildings, but Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, they focus solely on World Trade Center 7 because there's so much information. And the official report from NIST, NYST, the official report was so full of lies and disinformation and non-science that their goal is to get a hearing and eventually some court proceedings and things like that will further take us into what really happened with World Trade Center 7, because basically on 9/11 you have 3 buildings that collapsed in 2 planes. So it's definitely an issue that I would encourage everyone to look into. I know it's years in the past now. We're talking 14 years ago, but it still has relevance today because it was the catalyst for getting us into the wars in the Middle East and things like that. And when you start really delving into that, then you realize, okay, well, maybe what we were told for the reasons for getting into the wars in the Middle East, maybe that wasn't entirely true. And turns out that's the case, and the people that told us the lies originally have now recanted and say, well, you know what, maybe Saddam really didn't have weapons of mass destruction. Maybe we shouldn't have actually invaded there. But the truth is, we went to the Middle East for money and oil and profits, and to take out countries so that we could go in and occupy them and divide them up and give it to Saudi Arabia and Israel and others. So it's a real web of lies, and we're only just told just the surface stuff, just enough to placate the masses out there and kind of put everybody back to sleep, and hopefully then the mainstream media can go on with their additional spins and move on to other stories. But the truth is that there's so much information out there. We are only just told a very small little portion of it, and the portion that we are told isn't entirely correct either. So that's why I would always encourage people to do their own research, to look at it closer, because there's the great thing about the internet, as long as we have the internet, the great thing about it is that you can go directly to the source, and you don't have to go through a filter like CBS or ABC or NBC or someone like that. You don't have to sit and listen to what their spin is on something. You can go directly to the source and find out what's really going on. So, yeah, I would definitely encourage everybody to look at that. So, anyway, I wanted to let you know all that. So, as far as the geoengineering issue goes, as an introduction, again, geoengineeringwatch.org, there's a ton of videos on there. But what it is it is a series of different programs going on worldwide, and it's, I would say primarily over NATO countries, but it is a worldwide program, meaning that the particulates that they're putting in the atmosphere are spreading throughout the world.
I just was like, we're not recording. It looks like we are. Okay, sorry.
We're recording. I see the blinking red light.
Okay. So what was that you said?
Yeah, so the geoengineering issue, the stated purpose for geoengineering the planet, and first of all, let me just say that there are no scientists out there who will admit that it's going on really. Well, there's a few, not very many, but all of them will admit at least the fact that there are programs that we may need in the future at some fuzzy future date. Okay, so they admit that the programs could exist in the future, but what they won't say is that they exist now, that they're happening now. So it's really interesting because the science community has been sort of kept in the dark, especially the people that aren't involved in these particular programs. And with the science community, they kind of all believe the one thing, whatever that one thing is. They all kind of tend to believe that same thing or talk off the same page, if that makes sense. So from that standpoint, there are a few scientists who've come out and said, yeah, geoengineering is not only real and could happen in the future, it's happening now. The purpose of the programs are to basically curb the heat, the incoming thermal radiation from the sun. So the idea is to fill the sky with particulates so that it will block incoming thermal radiation from the sun. That's the stated purpose, and that's all in hopes of combating global warming and bringing the temperatures on Earth down versus the Earth heating exponentially. But what's actually happening is the more they spray, the more it's actually warming the Earth. They can create temporary cool-down zones anywhere they want, really. But what happens long-term is that these particulates in the atmosphere can be manipulated in ways where they can hit them with certain microwave radiation and things like that, where they can control and manipulate the jet stream and basically move precipitation from one place to another and drop it where they want. And just as an example, the California drought is completely geoengineered. It's completely engineered. It's done on purpose. And we watched it as far as them coming in and spraying the Eastern Pacific with grid patterns. You can see the X's, the huge grid patterns on satellite. They came in and basically covered and they still do it today. They're covering blanket spraying the Eastern Pacific, and what they do is they put all those particulates in the sky above the ocean, above the Pacific, and they can then migrate the moisture, the storms that come in off the Pacific. They can migrate that either over California and drop the rain east of California, or they can move the jet stream far enough north where it pushes it up into Alaska, and Alaska's had the warmest, last winter was the warmest winter they'd had in a long, long time. So essentially what we're talking about is geoengineering is, it's used for many different purposes, one of which is weather control. It can also be used for weather warfare by the military if they wanted to drought out certain countries, maybe so they could go in and take over their resources at some point. It can be used for weather warfare. It can be used for weather modification. It can be used for many other things as well. But it's a real program, and it is going on worldwide. It's happening over the United States in particular, probably the worst in the whole northern hemisphere over the United States. But it's also happening over Europe and everywhere else, like I said, NATO countries in particular, but it is happening pretty much everywhere. So that the people that are putting these programs into play are the people that stand to gain the most from it. So, and that's the central bankers on up to the ultra-rich families at the top of the pyramid structure that is the reality that we live in. And we, unfortunately, you and I are at the base of the pyramid. We're not at the top. So anyway, that in a nutshell is geoengineering. It's weather modification. It's climate engineering. It's weather warfare, all wrapped into one thing. And it's even beyond, it goes beyond that too, but that is a big part of it. So, yeah.
Crazy.
I know, it's pretty crazy. I know, when I first heard about it, when I first kind of figured out this was going on, and then to go outside and realize that the rain that's coming down may not necessarily have been supposed to have happened that day, that not necessarily somebody went out and planned it, but that our entire reality that we live day to day, that, hey, God's in control of the weather and we don't have any hand in it, is a total lie. Now, God is in control. He's in control ultimately, but man has come in and has taken over these systems for his own gain. And that's what's shocking. So, You're smiling.
Yeah, I just put up a Facebook post about my feelings about this. So, I said that we were going to cut off at 20 minutes, but I'm not seeing any, video seems to be fine, so I'd say just keep going.
Okay.
So
sounds good, yeah.
So you mentioned during part of what you're talking about sites that are used to well, I can't think of the word you used, but websites. Okay, so for instance, like when I talk about, I don't know, things that are helping me, like zappers or parasite cleansing or like Gerson therapy, various health things. What I get in response are people posting things from sites like Quackwatch or Wikipedia or I don't know Snopes or something.
Right.
But I know for real that these methods are helping people heal. They're helping me for sure. And so that can be discouraging to me when people are posting these things. Could you address these sorts of sites? What do you know about it from facts?
Well, websites like Snopes and others, Wikipedia and Snopes in particular, are usually the first type of sites that come up when you do a search for certain issues. It's depending on what it is. If it's a controversial issue like Morgellons, those type of sites will come up first because their goal is to debunk the true and real message there.
Debunk. That's the word.
Yeah. Yeah. So I personally take Wikipedia with a grain of salt. For the most part, if you're looking up information on your favorite singer or band or actress or whatever it is, that information is probably right. But just remember that they're controlled, just like Snopes is. And Snopes is, I've heard people say that Snopes is just a little old lady and her cat sitting on their couch. That they're just essentially dictating what's true and what's not true. But there is a connection between Snopes and the government. I don't know what agency of the government, but I do know that there is a connection, and I personally don't put any stock in anything Snopes says. Wikipedia, like I said, certain things is probably fine. Other issues that have more importance or more weight, like geoengineering and Morgellons and things like that, I wouldn't trust Wikipedia at all. And I would look at other alternative sources. You could do a search. There's a really good search engine that I would recommend called Good Gopher. And it's good, G-O-O-D, Gopher, Gopher.com. And that's a search engine put out by Natural News. And their goal is to give you information that is not mainstream media and therefore doesn't have the mainstream media spin and mainstream media lies. So if you really want true and real information, but you don't really know where to start, you might start at goodgopher.com. I've used that myself on many occasions. I use Google a lot just because I'm aware of enough now where I can kind of filter it out when I see it. If I do a search for a particular subject or whatever, I know when, a lot of the top things that come back might not necessarily be sites that I need to go to. So I've kind of developed my own filter for Google. But Google is a cutesy little name that was given to a major corporation, multinational corporation. It was essentially started by our government and DARPA, and they gave it a cute name so that you wouldn't necessarily be suspicious of them. But just know that Google is they don't necessarily have your best interest in mind, and the surveillance that they can put forth and to surveil you either through your Google account or your laptop or whatever. They can do an awful lot to really track you and understand exactly not only your purchasing habits, but anything that you might say. Anything as far as even having your camera on and recording sound. So just know that Google is actually a division of the government to an extent. Now I'm not talking about the individual employees down at the local level. Like, you might have a Google Fiber office or something like that near you. Those people are all compartmentalized. And when I say that they're basically a division of the government or the NSA, at the top levels of Google and other huge corporations, they are working with those in government. So the average employee is just doing their job. They're compartmentalized out of any of the actual reality of what's happening at the top levels. So those people are not bad. I don't mean to say that at all. I'm just saying that you just really have to be careful when you're using Google in particular for doing your searches. So Startpage is another good one. Startpage is a good search engine, good Gopher. But there's some others out there, and once you kind of get into a few of these issues, and whether you start with GMOs and trying to understand what's happening with genetically modified food, or if you maybe go to InfoWars and start looking at some of their articles, wherever you start, just start. And then at that point, you'll start developing over time your own filter where you can look at something and say, well, I don't know that I totally believe that. I'm going to go elsewhere, I have a few trusted resources that I use for anything that I post. And I get my information from people that have proven themselves time and time again, and InfoWars is one of those places. And so I would just say that. I mean, develop your own list of trusted news sources, and it should not be MSNBC and CBS and CNN. It shouldn't be those folks, because they have another agenda entirely, and that is to essentially take you away from the truth and to steer you in the other direction. So that's what I would say about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say somebody watching this video starts to learn information that they didn't know before. Then what? Like, if we do have this big, like way up at the top, these people up here are controlling what's happening with what we learn, controlling weather, controlling what we, I would just say what we believe, but I mean, I guess we can choose what we believe. But just, if there's somebody up here doing all this stuff, then what can we actually do to change? Like, what can an individual do to change anything? What can I do about geoengineering and, these issues? How can we help? How can we make a difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing you can do is to try and understand it the best you can and learn as much as you can. And like I said, you'll start to develop your own filters on who you trust and where you get your information. The best thing you can do is to raise awareness and to let other people know about these issues so that they become awake too. And the geoengineering issue is such a dire issue. When you really get into it, it can be a bit depressing, when you realize what's really going on and you really dig into it. Personally, my faith has a lot to do with how I can continue, every day kind of plodding ahead and putting out new information, because I feel like I sort of see the bigger picture now versus before when I only just saw a little sliver of it. But raising awareness and telling other people and to be able to talk to them about these other issues, and at least in some sort of, you don't have to be eloquent, but at least in some sort of way where you can convey whatever the truth is. And I would say that that's a really good starting point, is just making people aware of what's going on and how the reality that we're all fed from the day that we're born, basically, is really almost completely untrue. Now, not everything, but most of it. And we're programmed really from the day we're born to believe certain things and to ignore other things. So I would just encourage people to look at these different issues and to keep an open mind, and to not rush to judgment on a particular thing, especially if you are uncomfortable with it. And it can be uncomfortable. It really can be, and it probably should be, in order to shake people out of their sleep. For people that do what I do, we usually refer to people as being either awake or asleep. And by that, you mean that they're awake to the bigger picture. They're awake to the system that we've been put under. And for whatever reason, the information and really down to our lives are controlled to some degree. Not really by, what's the word? I don't think we're controlled down to the minute, like molecular level by any stretch. I'm just saying the information that's fed to us is given to us in a way to control our thoughts, so that we only think certain things. And 9/11 is a perfect example, I think. We're told that these two jets crashed into the two towers, and the towers fell because the jet fuel melted the steel beams, and the buildings collapsed. Okay, that is a type of mind control. You can call it what you want, but it's basically thought control or mind control, because the reality is jet fuel cannot melt steel beams. It's impossible. And those buildings, those two towers, and all three buildings, even World Trade Center 7, they were designed, especially the World Trade Center 1 and 2, were designed with jet airliner impacts in mind. They knew when they built those that it's possible that a plane could crash into them. And yet, there they go. They fell down in a pancake from, standing straight up to basically falling straight down, instead of falling over to the side. So there should be some red flags. You should really start to question what we're told. So my point in bringing that up was that is a type of thought control or mind control that we're all given. We're all told to believe this particular thing to form another opinion so that the solution can come about from the same people that perpetrated the original problem. And that is called Hegelian dialectic. And what that means, and it's done all the time, Hegelian dialectic is you start with, you have essentially the people that are the power brokers, right? And they create a problem. And once they've created the problem, then the people that are being affected form an opinion. And once they've formed an opinion, those same people that created the problem can then come in with the solution. So going back to 9/11, you have the people that created the problem, some of the different governments, some of the different small little different sections of our government that was involved in 9/11. And we know it was at the very least a stand down. We know if nothing else, they let it happen. And I would say that they were even involved. They were intimately involved in the whole process. Just based on my research and what I've gone through many hours of reading and video and interviews and things like that. So, they created a problem, and the problem was terrorists just took down these buildings and they killed 3,000 people. Okay, that formed a reaction. The reaction was the American public was scared silly. They were outraged and they were woken up to the fact that we're going to get hit by terrorists. Well, that's what we thought. But the real terrorists was our government. The real terrorists were the people that were perpetrating this crime on us that wasn't who we were told it was, right? So again, the power structure created the problem, they formed a reaction, and then now they've come in with the solution. The solution is to go invade the Middle East, go invade Iraq, go take out Saddam, go take out Afghanistan, and send our troops over there and put them in harm's way so that we could have a never-ending war on terrorism. So you can see it in the 9/11 issue. You can see how the Hegelian dialectic plays out, and it's being constantly played out every single day with different issues. So it's just a matter of what you want to look at, really. But geoengineering is another one. And there's so many. Yeah.
Okay, so
you still awake there?
Yep, I'm awake.
Oh, good.
I'm not like dozing off at all. So you guys have to know Doug on his Facebook page. I added him as a close friend because when you add someone as a close friend, then you get notifications of when they post. Oh my gosh, this guy posts like.
Oh yeah.
So
my apologies.
I've got 90 notifications today, and 20 of them are from Doug.
Yeah, I know. I apologize about that.
But, I mean, all this
There's
stuff,
so much information, though.
And, like, some days, I'm like, okay, let's go through and read Doug's posts and, check out these different links that he's posted and get a little education. And it's like, it's so many things. Like you just said, there's so many things going on. And I just feel like, how can a person become educated on everything and spread awareness about everything? I mean, what do we do? Just, share Facebook posts or like, it's so overwhelming.
It is, yeah. Well, the answer I think is to pick an issue. For me, it was geoengineering, but to pick an issue and then learn as much as you can about that. And then realize that issue, whatever it is connected to everything else. It's connected to all these other issues. So that you don't have to be an expert in everything to realize what the bigger picture is. And again, I would come back to InfoWars. I would recommend for anybody out there who has no clue about any of this, who they've never heard of any of it, go listen to Alex Jones. He's the best, single best person, single best place to get most of this information. He talks about geoengineering. He talks about geopolitical issues in particular. The race issues that are dividing the country right now. The refugees and migrants, what we're told in that whole story, especially in Europe, is not true at all. He talks about that all the time. I would definitely suggest for people to put aside what they've heard about Alex Jones and realize you're getting the mainstream spin on Alex Jones. And because of that, they're lying to you. And go listen to one of his shows and see if you still think the same thing. If you've ever heard of him and you don't like him, chances are you probably never listened to the show. So I think that's the single best place to go. InfoWars and Alex Jones radio show. He's syndicated. He's on like 200 radio stations across the country. They now have an uplink to satellite, so they're going to be on different cable systems and satellite systems. They already are. But the website is super comprehensive. There are tons of articles. He has many different writers. So even if you don't like Alex per se, if he's too over the top for you, there are other, they have the nightly news that's hosted by other people. So they have some really good reporters. Again, it's independent media versus mainstream media. I would suggest people start there, just because it's a really good place to get an overall true synopsis of what's happening. And Alex's take on it, it's his take, but it's the truth. And if you're open to the truth, then it's a really good place to go. Good place to start, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of people that watch my videos are not in the U.S. They're around the world. So, can you address maybe things that people around the world, if maybe the geoengineering is big in the U.S. but not elsewhere? I mean, is it everywhere? Or, like you mentioned, the whole UN having that big meeting, and I read some of the. Can you talk about the decision that all the countries in the UN are, working toward, that sort of thing?
Yeah. Well, I don't know where your listeners and watchers are. Are they in Europe, or are they just like Australia, or just kind of everywhere?
Just kind of everywhere, yeah.
Okay. Well, all of these issues that I've mentioned tonight affects all of us. It affects, if you're a human and you live on Earth, then you need to pay attention, because it affects you in some way. Geoengineering is being done everywhere. Like I said, it's especially NATO countries, but it's everywhere. So if you go outside and you look up and you see lines in the sky, you're witnessing climate engineering right above your head. And that's the thing. These systems, these different systems, no matter what they are, whether it's geoengineering or fluoride or vaccines or whatever it is, these issues are hidden in plain sight. They hide them in plain view so that you won't see it. And most people don't see it. They can't see it because it's just like it becomes part of your daily routine. Vaccines are safe and effective. Vaccines are safe and effective. That's what we're told. Well, that's not the reality. They're neither safe nor effective. And if you live in some other country, chances are they've got vaccines. So you need to investigate what's really going on with vaccines, because what we're told is not true. All of the independent, quote-unquote, independent studies that they have on the safeness and effectiveness of vaccines are actually funded by the vaccine manufacturers. And they have a lot to lose or gain, depending on how you look at it, by putting out the information that their product is safe and effective. And I would say this too, especially if you live in the United States. Most people don't realize vaccine manufacturers are completely and totally not liable for damages or death. Okay? So if you get a vaccine and you live in the United States, and probably it may go throughout Europe as well, but definitely in the United States, if you are vaccine injured or vaccine killed, if someone in your family dies or whatever, you cannot sue the vaccine manufacturers. And you need to know why. You need to figure out why that's the case. Well, they went to Congress a couple of decades ago and basically said, we can't keep going. We're running out of money. And what do we do? And Congress said, okay, well, we'll prop you up and we'll give you immunity. So the only people that enjoy total immunity from vaccines are the vaccine manufacturers. And their entire product and their whole range of what it is that they do is based on a false premise. And that was originally created with a guy, the guy that founded or started vaccines back in the late 1700s. So it really goes back to there, and his name is Jenner. And so Jenner started this whole idea of vaccines, and then it kind of snowballed from there. Edward Jenner. Yeah, I think around 1780, I believe. But anyway, it started there. The whole thing is based on a fraud, because if you look at it and you are really interested in digging deep, you will realize that vaccines have never saved anybody, and in fact have caused far more harm than done any good. And there have been researchers and many doctors and scientists across multiple countries over multiple decades who have found out the truth about vaccines and tried to put that information out there, and those people are taken out. One of the best examples I can think of in recent memory is a doctor from Canada named Andrew Molden. And Dr. Molden was a brilliant man, and he had, he was a PhD and had many different degrees, and he gave some...
I just saw his name on Quackwatch today. I was looking at the list of people, and I was like, that name sounds really familiar. I can't remember why. Thank you.
They put those people on Quackwatch because they want to take them down. They want to take their reputations down, even though he's now been dead for 2 years. He died in 2013 of a suicide, quote unquote. So one of his big things that he discovered was that vaccines, even one vaccine, will cause a mini stroke. And it affects different people differently, but all vaccines over a period of time are bioaccumulative. So it builds up over time, which is why we've had meteoric rises in things like Alzheimer's and dementia and things like that, because people are getting flu shots and they're getting other types of shots, and that aluminum and other things that are in these vaccines to be used as adjuvants, they build up in your system over time, and eventually your brain just sort of like shuts down because it's had enough, So my point is, in all of this really, is that no matter what the issue is, whether it's vaccines or geoengineering or whatever, it affects everybody in every country, really. And I would just encourage people to go look at some of these different issues and to see what they can find out. Yeah.
And so the UN thing, can you tell us about that?
The UN? Yeah, are you talking about Agenda 21?
Yes, that's called something else now.
Yes, that's right. That's right, you're learning.
Yay!
Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is something that we signed on to back in the early 90s, I believe. George Herbert Walker Bush signed us on to Agenda 21. But basically what it is, it's called the Agenda for the 21st Century. And it's a UN, it's not really even a law. It's more of like a decree. And now we've signed on to it, and all other major countries, first world countries, have signed on to it. And basically what it does is, in a nutshell, is that it ends up giving pretty much all power, as far as governmental power, to the UN, little by little, to a one world government, little by little. And so that's how these different groups, that's how they do what they do. They do it with incrementalism. Whatever it is that they're trying to achieve, they can't do it all at once. They have to do it a little by little, and they're very patient. And it might take them 10 years, it might take them 50 years, but they're going to get there, and they're going to do it little by little by little. And so Agenda 21 is, again, you could go search it and see what you find on it, but there's some really good people out there that are experts on Agenda 21. One of them is a man named Tom DeWeese, and his last name is DeWeese, and we've interviewed him a couple times on All Starts Radio. and he's an expert in Agenda 21 and describing exactly what it is. And Agenda 21 has now kind of morphed with the Pope now being kind of involved in this whole climate thing. It's morphed into something else. They're trying to accelerate it and make it happen even faster than it originally was. But now it's called the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And anytime you see the word sustainable development, that is a key word for Agenda 21. And that basically means globalism or one world government. And again, they're not going to just do everything at once. They have to do it incrementally to get there. And little by little, it's like death by 1,000 pinpricks, right? One pinprick might hurt. You might not notice it. But 1,000 or 10,000 or 1,000,000 certainly will kill you. So that's kind of what Agenda 21 is. It's operating on so many different fronts. Most people know of Common Core in the school systems. Common Core, which is what they're teaching our kids in public schools, Common Core comes from the UN, which is part of Agenda 21. And their goal is to not teach our kids new ways of thinking. It's literally to teach them not to be able to think. It's to be able to teach our kids what to think instead of how to think. And Agenda 21, which is now, again, it's called the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, is something that it wasn't happening as fast as they wanted it to. So now they've broken it apart into, I think, 17 different areas. And now they're trying to accelerate those areas and make it happen. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what it is. It's globalism. It's one world government. The UN's the top of that structure. You've got people like the Rockefellers that are involved in that. David Rockefeller donated the land in New York there where the UN sits. He's a very well-known globalist. He's at the top, certainly one of the top, what I would call ultra-rich. And these ultra-rich globalists, like him and many others, put themselves above everyone else, and then they exempt them from all the laws that we have to follow. So they exempt themselves, and yet we are subject to all these laws and conditions. And Agenda 21 is certainly one of those. So, yeah, I would definitely encourage people to look up Agenda 21 or even the new one, which is the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And while you're at it, you could search for Tom DeWeese. And another really good source is a guy named Michael Chapman. And Michael Chapman we've had on Lost Arts Radio as well. And I'm trying to think, there's another, Rosa Corey. Rosa Corey is a woman who goes around speaking about Agenda 21 and what it is. And Rosa, sorry, got a call. Rosa is definitely one of those people that she's put many videos out there, and everything she says about Agenda 21 is right on because she comes from it. She knows, she's almost like a whistleblower. She understands it because she worked in that. That was part of her life for a long time. So I would just encourage people to look it up, find out what's going on. You know, don't be a sleepwalker. Don't walk through life just assuming that everything you're told is true, because really very little of it's true. And people need to understand what's going on. They need the facts. And nobody's just going to come give you the facts, okay? You're going to have to go out there and search for the facts and search for the truth on your own. It's not going to be given to you. If you're waiting for that, it's never going to happen. And all you're going to get is lie after lie. So I would definitely encourage people to do their own homework, for sure. And I understand, you know, part of it is when people are like, well, how can I do this? I work a job, I pay my taxes, I take my kids to soccer games, all this stuff. And if you step back and look at it, you realize that keeping us busy, keeping us preoccupied with our cell phones and our paying of our bills and taxes and mortgage rates and stuff going up and, you know, everything that keeps us busy is really designed to keep us from having the time it takes to really understand some of these issues and to see the bigger picture. And I've been real fortunate with my time. You know, I kind of make my own hours, and I work when I have to work, and I do this other stuff, which is now part of my work, researching things and putting information out there. That's now part of my job. But I have probably maybe a little more flexibility than somebody working a 9-to-5 job or something. So it's been good for me because I can kind of go in and spend the time that I need learning these different issues and trying to figure out what's going on. Whereas some people are so overwhelmed with, you get to work and they've got 100,000 things they have to do that day before they check out at 6 o'clock or whatever. So I would just say, make time for what's important. Obviously, family and God should be the top priorities in your life, hopefully. And I understand, not everybody is a believer in God and Jesus, but for those who aren't, I would just say, family should certainly be right up there for you. And beyond that, try and figure out what you're really being told. Try and figure out if it's true or not, because I'm here to tell you most of it's not. So I would just say, again, do your own research and try and, just pick one issue. Don't be overwhelmed from the get-go. Pick one issue and look at it, whether it's geoengineering or GMOs or whatever. But definitely pick one and just learn as much as you can. That's where you have to start somewhere, and that's where you should start. So.
Thank you very, very much, Doug.
You're welcome.
Let's just remind people where they can find you and the radio show that you guys do. Yeah.
Okay. Well, as far as the radio show goes, I'm not actually on air very much. I'm the producer and engineer of it. I kind of push the buttons behind the scenes and handle the website and do all that stuff. So I'm the producer and engineer, but the radio show is called Lost Arts Radio. The host is Richard Sachs. He's a good friend of mine, and he's a brilliant man. He's been a natural health scientist for like 50 years, over 50 years, I think, at this point. So he really knows his stuff. He knows what he's talking about. He's very familiar with like Morgellons and GMOs and all these issues that we've talked about. So I would definitely say, check out our website. We've got all of our archives. We really just started the radio show this year. We started in January. So we've done 40-some shows at this point. But it's going real well. It's getting picked up other places, so that's been good for us. And we've got all of our archives on lostartsradio.com, or you can go to our YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.lostartsradio.com, you can get all of our previous shows. They're all on there. We also are on iTunes. You can just search for, under podcasts, you can search for Lost Arts Radio. So we're in a lot of places. As far as my personal page, again, I'm on Facebook, facebook.com/Diamond Disc, and it's DIAMONDISC, Diamond Disc, all one word. So, and I don't have my stuff set to public. It's all the posts I do are to my friends, to friends only. And I did that for a reason, and it's becoming more and more clear to me all the time that it was a good move. I'll just leave it at that. But basically, if you are interested in what I'm saying, go there and send me a friend request, and I'll add you, and then you'll start getting, hundreds of posts every day too, just like Tasha. No, it's not hundreds. I probably do maybe, between 20 and 40 a day, though. It depends on the news, Yeah. So it's a lot. There's a lot going on. We need to know what's going on. And everything I put out, I get from trusted sources. And those trusted sources, to me, are the real news media. So, and some of them are very spiritual and Christian oriented. So I would just say that too. If you're a Christian and you want to know what's going on as far as Bible prophecy and things like that, definitely tune in to my Facebook page. You might learn a few things, as I'm always learning. I mean, I don't know everything. I don't claim to, but learning new things all the time.
Cool. Sorry, my battery was dying.
No problem.
Okay, so that's where we can find you. I should mention that I am going to be interviewing Richard, I think, next week. So we'll talk more about health stuff then. Yeah. So.
Well, yeah, get him to tell you the whole history of vaccines, because that's like a whole show in and of itself. And he's so knowledgeable and so eloquent as far as just like being able to put it all out there and make it understandable. And I would add that Richard does a a weekly focus article each week on our website. So if you go to lostartsradio.com, you'll see a weekly focus in the menu bar at the top, and you can read some of his other posts, which he tries to do a new one each week. It doesn't always happen, but usually he does. So I would definitely encourage people to check that out too.
Wonderful.
But yeah, thanks, Tasha. I really appreciate your time. Yeah, it's been fun.
Thank you so much for sharing your stuff. I told Doug, you guys, that I wanted him on here because the stuff I share, I feel like it's always like conspiracy something, and I wanted some facts. So thank you for sharing facts with us and where to find facts.
You're welcome. Yeah, I always tell people I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy analyst. So that's a huge difference if you think about it, because there really are conspiracies. To conspire just means that two or more people have gotten together to make something happen with a predetermined outcome. Okay, that's what a conspiracy is. So if you think about it, most of the things that the government does is a conspiracy theory. So
it's funny, what I see on the screen is like a
it's my picture.
Yeah, but it's
my
kind of
picture
cool.
froze.
Like a rock star or something.
I don't know what happened to my picture.
Okay.
It was working, but then it froze.
Well, it's a nice picture to end with.
Yeah, I look like a zombie or something.
You look like Elvis, maybe.
I need to get a new camera. All right.
Okay,
Thanks again, Tasha. It's been fun.
Thank you very much, Doug. If you guys have questions or comments or whatever, you can post them below, and I'm going to tell Doug to check the comments, and so maybe he'll be able to answer them, or just, take your comments to, friend him, and then you can comment on the stuff that he posts or whatever. I don't know, Doug, should they do? What should they do if they have questions about what you said here? They should go do research, right?
Well, I mean, if they have specific questions for me, my Facebook page would probably be fine. That would be a good way to go. And my email address on the Lost Arts Radio setup is doug@lostartsradio.com. So if people want to email me, they can just do that, doug@lostartsradio.com, and that will get to me. And of course, if they want to post it in the chat, that's fine too, and I'll try and look at that.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Consider sharing it, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
All right. Thanks, Tasha. Bye-bye.